long day in court, which is what I did yesterday. So sorry, I missed all the things, but yeah, no. Okay, so I love a good countdown. Everyone, I'm sure, has their advent calendar for Christmas. They've got their countdown going, but have we started a countdown for when Joe goes? Because I think we need to start the official countdown. Start the bus. We're so close, but I'm going to put that date, and I'm going to start reading out the days until he's gonzo.
I'm just glad, Stephanie, that you were able to return from the North Pole safely from your annual stint.
I'm not that short. Hannah keeps sending me these meme jokes that I'm elf-sized.
Oh, yeah.
There was one video.
5'3.5".
There you go.
If you're counting half inches, you're short.
I don't view that as, that's not particularly short. I don't think so. It's all good.
I saw a video, and it's like, a whole office participated in the video. And it's talking about how your short coworker has to go to the North Pole for...
That's it.
Stature.
We can start a whole new craze. Lawyer on a shelf.
Stature matters not. It's status that counts. And that's where Stephanie Bell is tall. So we're not going to have any of this. No height shaming going on here. Not on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. 573-874-9390, the number. And, John, you've watched at least 2 or 3 presidential transitions. Stephanie, how many have you watched when you've been, conscious? I mean, and aware of what's going on around you after young childhood?
Oh,
4?
4, yeah. I think 4.
Hannah, 2? 3? No.
1.
2016, even though I wasn't old enough to vote, I felt like I was fairly involved in. So this would be the 3rd.
I've seen 2 or 3, and I don't recall a functional president after election, the president-elect being the functional president before he's inaugurated in any kind of magnitude like this. This has been amazing, and I think a lot of the historians looking at that are saying, wow, you see the major events, the Notre Dame Cathedral, there's Trump along with Jill Biden, and they seem to be getting along famously. They're doing great.
He's going to ring the bell at the stock exchange today, right? He's like out there doing, and everyone's excited. It's like he's already the president. Maybe we don't need a countdown, but what? I'm gonna make one anyway.
Big long interview with Christian Welker. I mean, look, people are coming with like frankincense, myrrh, and everything down in Mar-a-Lago to visit him. Justin Trudeau, foreign leaders. He's invited Xi Jinping to his inauguration. Talk about challenge, getting in front of it. Always on the offensive is Donald Trump. He's just always on the offensive.
And he's back on his handshake game.
We did, yesterday, Randy, we were talking about the short list of who might be named the Time Person of the Year for 2024. I said several times I'd be shocked if they picked Trump.
And what did I say?
You said you'd be shocked if they didn't.
Thank you very much.
We've not heard from Time themselves that he's been picked, but lots of headlines yesterday said that they were going to pick him. So
Jesse
we'll
Waters,
see.
yeah, Jesse Waters, I think, reported that as fact last night, and I kept looking for it. I haven't seen that confirmed.
I was gonna, in the cover that lots of people were resharing on Twitter, is the cover from 2016 when he was named Person of the Year. So I will believe it when Time announces it.
You think it's a viral?
And then Randy's going to say, told you so, because I'm on Team Randy here. But I also want to say, told you so about Daniel Penny Monday. I haven't been here since then, and I want to get that in.
You've been sitting on that one.
I think we talked about that on Monday, that you had predicted that.
And you were
gave
skeptical.
You credit.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm always skeptical until I see it. I don't believe it. That's just my nature. And especially when it comes to a New York jury. I think they were maybe, what's the possibility that a couple of the jurors who actually wanted him to be guilty on the one account, on the first account, the manslaughter, actually were just angry at the judge that, they couldn't continue their deliberations and try to convince the others. And they were like, okay, you're going to just dismiss this charge? Phooey on you. Now this guy's innocent. I mean,
if I could read the minds of jurors, I would be one rich woman.
Yeah, you can't read the minds of jurors.
So, I think jurors do things for a whole host of reasons, and there are people out there who their whole job is to do some analysis and even to do post-analysis. So I think we might end up hearing more about what led to that. But I think, I think people are sick and tired. Even people on the left who normally would be sensitive to those types of arguments, I think they are after all that Trump's been through and in the place where we are at, again, there are actual real criminals out there that we should be spending our time and resources on. And I think the jury sent a message to people like Alvin Bragg.
What a contrast between this ostensibly quiet, humble, former Marine who takes it upon himself to run into danger when, as he told Judge Janine in the long Fox Nation interview, I couldn't see these kids were cowering. Women were huddled up. They didn't know what to do. And I couldn't watch that happen. I couldn't live with myself if that would have something would have happened to them. And he described in detail when the guy was, I guess he was on his back at some point and he had to make a move to get him in the chokehold, or else he said, I don't know, is he going to pull out a knife and kill me? I don't know. But the way he presented it, his demeanor was cool, calm, and collected. Perhaps he's been coached very well, but I don't think so. I got the sense that he's really very humble and very doesn't want to be in the spotlight. On the other hand, you look at this narcissist, psychopath, crazy kid that thought he was going to take it upon himself to correct what are objectively abuses of the healthcare system. He's got to be a hero. Someone has to do it. Really? What is that all about? So it's a compare and contrast that's epic.
It is, and I think it's hard to see anyone as the aggressor and as the hero. And I think now they're putting out warnings for other executives, and I think that's really terrifying. I mean, we've got you would be surprised at how many high level executives we have. Not surprised, but I think sometimes people forget about how many huge businesses we have here in Missouri and how many high level executives. And I worry about a copycat because of the way that the left and the way that others are kind of fantasizing about this killer and kind of resorting to this vigilante justice.
To expand on your story here, you're right. The Daily Mail is showing these pictures, wanted posters, denying medical care for corporate profit, and they've got it pixelated out. Apparently it's this one or another corporate executive from the insurance companies. I mean, what is that all about? These are posted all over New York City. And, of course, they're saying that these kind of threats can be prosecuted. That's a specific threat, right? I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, and I think it's so difficult to be in a society where they've, put so much pressure and tried to censor free speech. Because in this situation, I think the answer is more people need to stand up and speak and tell their story. And I think put pressure on their elected officials. And, I think we can all agree that changes are needed in the healthcare system, but this isn't the way to go about it. So, the fact that a lot of the same people who are kind of in this movement are the same people who have told us that we can't speak about the things that we want to speak about. That's what we need. We need more people discussing the issues and not this kind of behavior.
Well, I'm going to ask Rudy Veit, Representative Veit, when he joins us at 7:10, if there is any kind of a renewed thirst for a serious discussion about health care and what can be done about it for Missourians, whether they're Medicaid, whether they're Medicare, whether they are on private insurance. I'm going to ask him that because you really don't hear much about health care. And yet, look at the vitriolic response where people are saying, they're just like, he deserved it. It's about time they pay their price. They've been abusing us. It's brutal.
And I'm not,
I think the guy is a martyr. Let me just say this. I think that in a very ironic, weird, unknowing kind of way, Brian Thompson is a martyr, and he didn't even know it. He was either tone deaf to the drumbeat of the anger going on in patient land, in provider land, in doctor land, in administrator land, or he knew about it and didn't care. But now he's gone, and it has launched a discussion, and he may be viewed, the hero may turn out, of course, not to be the self-proclaimed hero, idiot Mangione. The hero may be Brian Thompson,
and I'm not,
ironically.
And I'm not wanting to give you a free commercial here, Randy. And to be fair, you're not my doctor, but I have more of a self-pay doctor, and it's been an eye-opening experience for me. And I think how much of the blame can go back on things like Obamacare, where we told people for a while that they had to have insurance, or where we just told people that's the only way and convinced people you have to go into this. And I remember when I first opted out and I started in more of, I have of course, catastrophic, and I participate in a health share, but it's given me so much more control, not only of the price, but of my healthcare decisions. And it's been, I think, a really positive thing for my family. But I think, I think we have to start giving people more freedom to do what they want. And I think if we had more competition in that space, like people saying, you know what, I'm not going over to these big insurance companies. I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to take personal control for my own health, like RFK is trying to tell us to do. I think that's really an important message. And I think, if we could get to a space there, I think this problem wouldn't be nearly as bad. And I had lots of discussions with people who are very smart, and they said, how could you go to a health share? It's not guaranteed. And I said, do you think the reason why insurance companies have tons of lawyers is because your care is guaranteed? Yeah. You're very, absolutely not.
Yeah. Well, look at Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield being in the news here lately. You want to talk about the vitriol, their whole approach to trying to limit anesthesia during surgeries, which they backed off of, and now the kind of bumping heads with Mizzou to see what's going to happen by the end of March next year. So you can understand how the public sometimes zeroes in on the healthcare companies.
However, ladies and gentlemen, you know what I always remind you of. You voted for government involvement, and your parents back in 1966 voted for Medicare, Medicaid. Then you voted for HMOs, and you voted for the collusion, the terrible, terrible, collusory, incestuous, terrible relationship between government and your insurer. Insurance isn't insurance. It's third-party payment for your medical care. And it's not insurance. You buy insurance for your home if it burns up.
But I mean, look at how it's bubbled up here locally, John, with what happened in Jefferson City and them just changing their insurance plan. I mean, it's something that really fires people up, and we haven't seen the community that fired up about anything in a long time.
Yeah, that was a couple of weeks ago, obviously, involving the insurance for the city employees. I do have a story up on 939theeagle.com about MU Healthcare because it's based in Columbia and Anthem. The one thing, the biggest thing that MU Healthcare is doing right now, people have a lot of questions. I don't get into as much as this vitriol and stuff, but they do have a lot of people. A lot of people are asking questions about their insurance, and they do have a phone number that is set up for people to call in, and I have a link to that on our homepage. I've been given it on newscasts as well. You can call that number between 8 and 6, but it is a big deal. And Randy, to your point, you ask about Representative Rudy Veit, who's from Wardsville, and the issue of health care. Let's just be quite frank. Health care has not been a topic of discussion at all, at least any major discussions. Now, it has been over the years. Matt Blunt talked about it quite a bit, and when he took office in 2005. The last governor I remember really talking about health care, really getting into it, was Mel Carnahan, but that was way back in the start of his term in 1993. It's not a topic I hear a whole lot about.
And it's insane because we talk about the price of milk and the price of eggs. And, I think if I look at my businesses or I look at my personal finances, I mean, certainly for businesses, my biggest expense, I think, is insurance. And in my personal life, I think the only thing I spend more on maybe is my mortgage. I mean, the amount of insurance.
Here's Stephanie Bell with the Daily DC Rundown.
And in that clip, they say, "Hey, how are you feeling?" And he opens up his suit jacket, and he's got like the American flag.
The coat
inside.
liner.
Yeah, he's got it, and I love that. I've got
great.
friends who have that, and that you open it up, and it's like their favorite NFL team or whatever. I think a little bit of flair. Men can't really have a lot of flair with their wardrobe. Maybe their socks, but the lining of the jacket is a special touch, and I can appreciate that. It looks like I think even Cornyn though is still saying that it's not going to be a breeze for Pete Hegseth to get through, but he's looking much better than he did just, I think, 10 days ago. We got some more information out. Trump has invited Xi Jinping, right, to come to the inauguration. That is exciting, I guess. And
It's a challenge.
yeah, Biden yesterday, who had previously pardoned his son, he also commuted the sentences of nearly 1,500 people and pardoned 39 other individuals for, and he described them as having committed nonviolent crimes. He said there's more to come. So whether or not we get more people in the Biden crime family pardoned for anything that they haven't been charged for forever, I don't know, but I suspect we're going to see some big ones.
These weren't preemptive like they've been talking about.
Correct.
Right?
These are
were
like typical pardons and things that
but a lot
presidents
of
do.
them, historically.
But a lot. We also got a word out earlier this week about a new appointment, a friend of the show, Harmeet Dillon, out of California. She's appeared on our program multiple times. Of course, she had previously run for RNC chairwoman. She came on election night.
Yeah.
I was out there in Arizona. She was there leading our
Friend
team.
of Stephanie?
Yeah, leading our team. I have very good stories. We might have. I don't think we have time here, but we might have to tell them.
Yeah.
Tell them later. But I think that's a really good pick. Of course, she's going to lead this
Mike Keogh is our buddy Scott Steele's father-in-law, and the governor-elect likes to do his Christmas show on KWS on the radio on a Saturday morning.
Of course he does. Why wouldn't he?
Why not?
Does
so
that
we'll
mean,
be hanging out with the whole tribe?
With
Scott
that relationship, does that mean that the governor gets big discounts on prime rib and that will be served all across the Capitol on Inauguration Day? I'm just saying.
Never know.
Well, and I believe Scott Steele is going to be a first-time dad here in a few months.
Oh, really?
So.
Hey,
That's right.
Cool.
And John, if he brings any snack sticks in again,
they will be kept off camera, and I will deny any knowledge of their existence.
you better share.
Also, later on in the program at 8:08-ish, we'll talk with Neerja Deshpande. She has written an op-ed in The Hill about the differential treatment, the double standard for education secretary nominees. Miguel Cardona is one, now, but the one that Trump. It's funny how the Republican senators really had very little beef with anyone that Biden or before him Obama chose. And on the other hand, I mean, every one of them, including lately now, the new target after Hegseth has sort of been fading as the target. Now it's Tulsi Gabbard. Yes. Reports out of the Senate that she doesn't seem to be, quote, prepared. I don't know. That's what's being reported, but who knows? I don't know about these people. She's a fighter. She's been deployed. She knows about the importance of national security. And again, I would maintain that these cabinet secretaries don't have to be experts. They have to have a vision, right? They have to have a vision. Let the experts that they hire figure out the weeds of it all. But I don't know. That's just.
Well, and the fact that her background doesn't match the background of the folks before her. I mean, we can't keep doing what we've been doing. It's not been working. So it's, for me, it's not a selling point that like, oh, she doesn't have the exact background that everyone else who's been in this position does, because those people, I don't think, did a very good job.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we talk a lot, I rail a lot about the insurance industry and Medicare, which is just another insurance company. Medicare is just another insurance company. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, they and Medicaid control over 50%, probably closer to 60% of the healthcare dollars spent in this country. Let me just give you a case in point about why I would say that the rules are crazy. Remember when Obamacare came around, it was going to be everything to everyone. And suddenly, if you have an Obamacare compliant plan, and there are carve-outs if you have certain, if you're self-funded and you have a legacy plan, it doesn't have to comply with all the preventive payments and all that. But there was a menu of things that had to be provided by your Obamacare compliant insurance, including colonoscopy. So your screening colonoscopy has to be paid for. Well, a good 20% of the time, I don't know the number. I have to ask my friend Dr. Nick Lorenz or one of his colleagues over at GI Associates about the numbers. But a significant percentage of the time, they go in and they look in your colon. Oops, there's a polyp. What do you do with a polyp? You biopsy it. Under the Obamacare rules, your free colonoscopy now just became your out-of-pocket cost to some extent, because now it's a diagnostic colonoscopy. Talk about changing the rules. We were talking about changing the rules, like, when government entities change rules after you've tried to abide by the rules, in that Kansas City landfill case, for instance. And, there were issues around there. We were talking during the break about that. Okay, well, how do you feel about that?
Up the rear.
You go in you say, okay, my colonoscopy is free. A colonoscopy is $6,000-$7,000, maybe. I don't know what it is, cash price.
It's about $8,000.
Okay, and you go in and you got a little polyp. They biopsy it, and I think the rules have been changed now. But suddenly, the free is totally gone after the fact. Now, if anyone wants to argue that that's good, right, and should be lauded as something wonderful, you tell me. That's just one of 1,000 egregious abuses of these insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid. It's time we have a discussion.
Well, it's
sorry about that, but I'm telling you, it's outrageous. And you know who takes the heat for that? The doctors doing the colonoscopy, because then the patient says, "Well, what do you mean, my colonoscopy?" Don't ask me. I just tried to do the right medical thing.
And when I say $8,000, you're right, people. But it's a very important thing. If you don't get screened for it, you could get colon cancer, and there's a lot of other issues.
No one wants to get screened because the word got out that, my God, if you find a little benign little pimple on my colon, a little benign thing, suddenly I'm out $8,000.
Well,
you got to be kidding me.
The alternative is colon cancer.
I know, but I mean that's a bait and switch, and that's that personifies what the insurance companies do. You pay and pay and pay, and then when you make a claim, well, no, I really don't think so. No, that wasn't medically necessary. Oh, you didn't read the fine print. Did you get the pre-auth from your doctor? Pre-authorization is not a guarantee of payment for benefits. They say that all the time.
I hear it.
They are evil, and we need to call them out. CEOs don't need to be killed. We need to call them out.
Well, I would add, and when I say $8,000, that would include, as I recall, anesthesia, and there were like 4 bills. I remember seeing 4 bills, anesthesia, and you have to pay the anesthesiologist. All that was included. It was about $8,000 or $9,000 overall. It's extremely expensive, but it has to be done. But it's a big issue. We've got a great healthcare system in Columbia. Jefferson City has great healthcare as well. JCMG's there, and they've got Capital Region affiliated with MU Healthcare. And then our rural areas do the best they can as well. We've got a lot of rural areas that a lot of them have to come to Columbia or Jeff City for colonoscopies.
Let me ask you something, Stephanie, the lawyer in the room. Hypothetically, if Randy Tobler made the comment on 93.9 The Eagle and KWS that there are insurance rules that require that an insurer have what's called network adequacy, you have to be able to fulfill your client's needs when it comes to radiation oncology and transplants and NICU and all these tertiary care stuff and you have to be able within that area that you're serving. You have to have network adequacy. If Randy Tobler were to remind administrators in the area that that's a rule, and without making any comment or having a meeting officially, but just reminding that that's the rule, and if just by perchance, if everyone woke up some morning and told Anthem Healthcare, we're not taking you anymore, I wonder what would happen. Hypothetically, I'm just asking you, hypothetically, what would happen?
I would remind the doctor that lawyers are very much like doctors, and you don't want your podiatrist doing your heart surgery. And Stephanie does not practice healthcare law.
What I'm saying is what you're
point.
seeing with MU Healthcare is what happened down in Springfield, I believe, and I think it happened in some other jurisdiction. Hospitals are sending a shot over the bow to the insurers saying we can't take the cuts anymore. We can't take the regulations anymore. We can't hire more and more people to deal with your stupid denial of claims and the pre-authorization for a freaking aspirin. And so you know what? This is a notice. We're out of here.
But
now, you want to talk?
I would also remind the doctor that I personally have had to change my insurance because of things people or because of radio. Right, that they're also concerned that somebody might say something on the radio that might do something crazy.
Let me say this.
So
there should be
be careful what you hypothetically say on the radio.
There should be a United Healthcare. There should be United Healthcare. There should be Blue Cross Blue Shield. And in old days, they covered things that should be insured, like a colonoscopy, like a visit to the emergency room. You should not cover a birth control pill packet. You should not cover a sinus infection visit, a UTI. Those are $20, $30, $40 visits. But because of the regulations and all of the expectations that we, the public, have through our legislation voted for, we expect them to pay for all these things. And in their defense, they can't pay for every little thing and do it for free. I
go as a libertarian-ish, I would go back to I think there are marketplace solutions for some of these things. And so like a colonoscopy, there's new technology, right, that you can mail off your stuff and they can check it. And I think
it's called a poop smear.
Right. I think that can be, so I think I still feel like we should take control the business community and personally to figure out solutions for these things.
Which is why I'm urging people to get active. Just get active. Whether it's with your HR department or whatever, get active and tell insurance, look, I want you to be reasonable. I want you to make a profit. But by golly, come on, I'm paying you all these premiums and the deductible that most people never even reach. Can you just throw the dog a bone and cover something once in a while?
Listener Rebecca texts us at 874-9390. She says, I had a colonoscopy about 2 years ago, had no insurance, and paid out of pocket, and it was only $700 for the whole thing.
Wow.
Well,
that's I'm not sure where she went, but...
most healthcare people are very happy to give you deep discounts if you pay cash because they don't have to fight the insurance denial.
That is the
real deep discount.
But I remember seeing the bill was with everything in anesthesia was as $8,000 or $9,000. But, I know people are going to probably panic. What I really don't want people to do is panic over this thing with Anthem and Blue Cross. I've got a detailed story up 93.9theeagle.com, and I include the phone number in there. My gut feeling is that they're going to go negotiate. It's going to get down to go down to March 31st. And there's a very good chance this thing will be settled before then. So in the meantime, they're urging people to continue to go to the doctor and stuff.
If anybody in Jefferson City watched the negotiations that happened about a year ago, JCMG, Jefferson City Medical Group, got into the same kind of discussions with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they came out on a positive note and came to terms as of November last year.
These places, I remember back in the 90s when the drive-through deliveries happened, when you had to be out within 24 hours, they started to do that. The OBGYNs in St. Louis sat down and we had a meeting with Anthem. We said, look, I don't know who's going to deliver your babies if you want to do this. We can't afford to do this. It's not good medicine. We're not going to take the risk of sending someone home early. But why does it take that kind of strong arm, New York City, smoke-filled? Why do we need to do that? Come on, be reasonable, people. You're making gazillion dollars, for crying out loud.
Randy's got a beef with insurance companies. I have a beef with Brian Hauswirth this morning.
Uh-oh.
He's wearing the correct color, right? He's wearing gold, but he's got Wyoming on his shirt. And I thought you would show up this morning wearing black and gold Mizzou, Brian.
Got to get a close-up on that abomination.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Brian. But we got our football schedule yesterday, and it's kind of wild.
It really is. And full disclosure, I do 5 schools of school boards at Learfield, and I'm wearing my proud Wyoming shirt. Wyoming, one of my schools. But I did the day of the
That's why you see him in his Roll Tide gear
exactly,
from time to time.
in Purdue and stuff like that. But I did wear my Mizzou outfit yesterday to the Ready board meeting. But to your point, the schedule's up. This is on 939theeagle.com, KWS.com. I've got a story, a link to the schedule as well in that, Stephanie. Historic things. Number one, I don't ever remember Mizzou ever opening with 6 straight home games. 6 straight. That's unprecedented to me. And certainly there's never been 8 home games at Faurot. So it's going to be big.
Going to be a great Tiger tailgate season.
Yeah, early on there's going to be some hot tailgates. But the only thing I worry about it, not to you have to think about this a little bit. Mizzou struggled on the road. Those at the A&M and the Alabama game, those were their 2 worst games on the road. I'd like to see them get used to playing a road game, and they did much better at South Carolina. But by the time they're not going to get on the road until October,
right?
So
will the improvements at Faurot Field be done?
No. That's going to be going on through the entire. You're going to see cranes and everything else during the entire season next year. It'll be fine. It should be all ready for 2026 for the season, but no, it will not be done. That's about $250 million project. In fact, if you drive by the stadium right now, there are cranes and construction equipment everywhere. And one more thing I should add about the schedule coming up: Alabama comes to town. And a lot of the schedule look very similar to this year. A lot of the same.
Who else comes to town week 2?
Kansas Jayhawks. Now, that is new.
That's going to be fun.
And, of course, they announced homecoming will be September 7th versus UMass.
Yes.
Or September 27th, excuse me.
That'll be big. UMass. There's a guy, when we talk about the Kansas Jayhawks, for some of our older listeners, they might remember, there's a guy named Gale Sayers. You remember it. And I don't want to choke up. Oh, my God. And even a bigger story, there was a movie called Brian's Song, phenomenal about Brian Piccolo. But Gale Sayers, I mean, KU, people think it's a basketball school. They've had great players over the years. Gale Sayers, also a guy named John Riggins came here to Columbia one time.
Oh, yeah. And then
Kansas
he became
Jayhawks.
a biggie for the Washington Redskins. 573-874-9390 is the number. To follow up on the story yesterday, you've heard a lot about these drones that have been swarming over, military facilities in New Jersey, Donald Trump's golf resort there as well. And, the FBI testified the other day to Congress. We don't know what's going on. We don't know. Murphy said, don't worry about it. Well, if you don't know what's going on the one hand, how does the other hand say, don't worry about it, there's no threat to the public? That just doesn't comport. I don't know why one arm of government doesn't talk to the other arm of government before they start making statements when it comes to public safety. But that's just me. I mean, maybe that's an over expectation. But
don't we have rules about drones for regular people?
Well, yes, a listener sent this to us. In the United States, you need a drone license.
Register, yeah.
For commercial use, you need a license if you're flying for work or business, taking aerial photos of your house to market it online, or using a drone to monitor construction. You don't need a license if you're flying for fun, like under 400 feet, flying within your visual line of sight, not flying over restricted areas, and defining the intent of your drone operation. What does that mean? You need to have a flight plan to fly recreational? I don't know.
Well, when you have a drone, and Jefferson City is a good example, the drone, you cannot fly within 5 miles of an airport, and Jefferson City's complete state office complex, and all of falls in that 5 miles zone.
Yeah, there was a weird thing where somebody flew a drone, too close to the state capitol, John, and it kind of raised a bunch of eyebrows at some point.
We were in the command center over a previous inauguration where that very thing happened by one of the local TV stations, and the folks from state government were none too happy about it.
Well, here's what Congressman Jeff Van Drew told Harris Faulkner what he knows.
Well, here's the real deal, Harris. I'm also on the Transportation Committee, on the Aviation Subcommittee, and I've gotten to know people. And from very high sources, very qualified sources, very responsible sources, I'm going to tell you the real deal. Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones. That mothership is off, I'm going to tell you the deal. It's off the east coast of the United States of America.
Oh, well, there's nothing to worry about, says Governor Murphy. And Congressman Van Drew says there's a mothership off the East Coast launching Iranian drones? Nothing to worry about. Just have another Rudy Veit. I've had the pleasure of having lunch with Rudy, and boy, it's really just a lot of fun. There are no better men in the land than Rudy. And welcome to the program, Rudy. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks. But I have to remind you that legislatures by nature have a big enough ego. When people start making their ego bigger, that's probably when some of the problems start to come up to be.
Hey, well, I think we ought to just off the top of it. Of course, we want to talk a little bit about the coming legislative session and particularly, your priorities and your agendas. I know pre-filing was, a couple of weeks ago, last week, I guess. What is your overall sense of cohesiveness in the conservative caucus? Let's just use a big, broad brushstroke on that. On both sides of the Capitol, the House and the Senate. Obviously, you're representative, but what's your sense? Is there going to be a little more kumbaya or not this session?
Well, you have to be optimistic and think so. And Governor Kehoe and Senator Laughlin and John Patterson are already working together, trying to get people to work together. And I think if we have a unified leadership and they set some strict goals of, let's look at bills that can pass, and they're not just out sound bites for our election, and bills that if they go to the people can pass and take strong leadership roles, that's going to pretty well control it. People, always will push the cart as far as they can push it in their favor. But, if Kehoe and Patterson and Cindy all get together and say, we're going to cover bills that have a chance of doing something, I think that everybody will fall in line.
Rudy, as your career as an attorney, you filed so many bills that deal with everything from the crime side to the court system and all. But I know you've told us early on this year you're focusing on some business issues at the State House, right?
Well, there are a number of business bills that have been filed and some new ones, bills that have been out there and just died at the Senate last week. And, Judge Dave Evans is gone, so he had some bills that didn't get through. There's some bills from the other side of senators that they need through. I mean, just for instance, some bills dealing with regional jails. I mean, counties cannot afford to have one single jail and things like that just need to be addressed. There's the numerous ones with dealing with the Civil Legal Service Fund. You got to get the sunshine continued years. Dentist bills where we're right now, most of our dentists working for treating our inmates probably are skirting at the edge of the law, doing it now because we've got some quirks in the law. But those things will all fall in line only if our leadership takes a strong role and we don't get tied up the whole session talking about, abortion and everybody's different version of it. I looked at the different bills. There's 10 or 12 different abortion bills or reproductive right, life bills. There are a number of other bills dealing with the guns. There's bills dealing with a lot of bills dealing with an area that's going to be very interesting is the I think it's Article 1023, which is the repeal of that article, which was passed in 2016, went into effect, which limits how much sales tax can go on transactional fees and service fees. And they want to repeal that, so we can now start taxing when you go to the doctor. We can start taxing what your plumber taxes, what you pay your plumber. That's a whole new area of tax, and that's on about 4 or 5 bills. So it'll be interesting to see what the the collateral consequences of it are, and what if you reduce tax somewhere, you pass it on to another area, you're going to affect a whole different group of people. And so look at what economic group's going to be hit with it. But I'm excited. I think Governor Kehoe has a strong personality and leadership. Senator Laughlin has a strong leadership. And Patterson, and they seem to be talking to each other, not at each other. So I'm excited.
Do you have any concerns about budgetary pressures for this legislative session? I think yesterday Governor-elect Kehoe announced a consensus revenue estimate, although that estimate is slightly up for FY26 over FY25. It's not up enough to cover inflation. And so whereas I think the legislature in recent years has gotten used to just being able to fund a lot of projects, especially for local governments, and the money was quite free flowing, this year might be a little bit different. Do you think that could create additional pressures in the upcoming legislative session?
Well, it's one that is there, and everybody should have expected it because we were well aware of it last year, and Joe Engler now is a circuit clerk, and I had many discussions about it isn't just this year we're going to have a tight budget. We're going to get a tighter budget next year. And we started a lot of programs when we handed out all the COVID money, which I'm not saying was wrong, but that source isn't going to keep coming. And so there's going to be some tightening of budgets, and we're going to feel the pain. But with inflation and everything and reduction in income, you're going to have to start cutting somewhere if you're going to balance the budget.
Again, our guest here is State Representative Rudy Veit. He is a Republican from Wardsville, represents a lot of you folks listening to us on News Radio 950 KWS, the Wardsville, Taos, Jefferson City areas. He'll be a senior coming up in January. He and Dave Griffith will be seniors, so I expect they'll probably be sitting towards the back of the chamber. We'll find out what happens in January. Session is less than 1 month away. We're also live on 93.9 The Eagle. Representative, you've got a number of bills you've pre-filed already. I'm very interested in House Bill 126. Simple bill, but very important to you. Simply does this. It reinstates the presidential preference primary. How important is that to you?
Well, it is important, but it's another one of those bills that I'm going to make sure before we start pushing it, we have a unified effort to do it, because last time we had a lot of people backing it. We had a few people who tried to change it just enough to make it controversial. And I still believe that, while what's a preference primary, generally speaking, if we vote in a primary for a certain presidential candidate, that's who our electors support. And what good does it do you have the right to vote if you don't have the right to have an input on who goes on the ballot? And I'm telling you, I've been to the caucus. We've seen them this year. And they were interesting, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Rudy, there are those, though, that on the other side say, well, but wait a minute, the party is a party, and the party should have the purview to choose who the party wants. And if the people don't like that come general election, well, that'll sort itself out. How do you answer that?
Well, I look at it from more philosophical. I want people involved in this, and presidential primary gets people involved. And if you don't have people involved, then the party gets to, our party goes one way and then the other. And that's a valid concern. It is a concern. We have the right to choose who runs as Republican. But, I just think in the overall scheme, presidential primary gives a lot more input. And the parties, what are we going to do, start 3 or 4 parties again? Because that's what we're getting to. Yeah. The parties are getting divided, and then I don't think we need a country of 4 or 5 parties running.
I have to ask you, the discussion nationwide that has been launched concerning health care, and it's been sort of like a pot of water that's just beginning to boil, but it's beginning to boil for a long time, just a few bubbles at the bottom of the pot. Hasn't been a real prominent national topic, but I think this latest unbelievable, just savage, cold-blooded murder of Brian Thompson, it's just an unbelievable father of 2 and husband. Nonetheless, the reality is people are coming out of the woodwork now, I think, expressing their angst. Do Missouri legislators have any interest in trying to do what they can to protect people from their insurance companies?
Well, certainly there's an interest, but there's a limit to how much we can do. And once you start messing around with the free market, you have another set of problems. I know with the university plan and state right now, there's some discussions going on, but those will work out. But I have my own just personal experiences. Is we remember my family needed a back surgery, and they, you got to do an MRI, and then you got to do therapy. And now what they've done is pushed it off to next year. So I got a whole new set of deductibles, which is a challenge of its own. But health care is becoming a more and more major crisis. People that want to retire or change jobs and go out to open market, they can't find health care. If they find it, they have such a high deductible. I still have hopes that the open market will try to control some of that. I get leery every time we as a state try to regulate something too much, and we tend to...
Well, one idea would be to give Medicaid people a voucher and let them shop the open market rather than concentrating power in 3 contracted insurance companies. I'm just saying. I mean, in a way, the state is contributing to the concentration of power among insurance companies.
Well, there's a lot of bills. That sounds good, but I haven't given enough thought to look at the collateral.
All right. Well, you and I will have another lunch. Rudy Veit, Representative Rudy Veit, joins us in Wake Up Mid-Missouri today.
Thank you.
Rudy, over a couple sessions when we've talked to you in the past, you outlined to us some bills that was something hit kind of near and dear to you, and that was a church-run group homes that fell under sort of an exemption because of the oversight from state government and all. You got that reined in, or you have any more fine-tuning to do on that?
We met yesterday afternoon on that bill because there are attacks on it again. And there are some, the problem is that they have to register. If they don't register, you don't know they're in existence. And we just had a big one in Piedmont with a whole bunch of charges and that have come out of it, and abuse that they're shut down now. We're getting them shut down, but that's a constant battle. Like I said, there was two bills. One bill would completely undo what we just did, and two of them were modifying it. And so we met yesterday with part of the reps who were carrying them and seeing, is there common ground? And if you pass any legislation, there are some things that need to be tweaked. The problem is some of the things that they want to tweak tip the scale a little stronger than certain other groups wanted to tick, and the last bill was kind of a consensus bill. So, but no, that's an ever ongoing battle. And
well, during the hearings on your previous bill, man, there were some real horror stories that came out.
Well, this one in Piedmont, the stories are just the same. The abuse and that went on are just the same. And in fact, HBO did a documentary on it and showed some of the abuse, but a lot of it, you got to realize there are some good operators out there.
Yeah, and I just
bad ones that are running it.
I'd point out that Representative Rudy Veit was interviewed on camera by NBC's Dateline. He and Kerry Engel, a Democrat from Lee Summit, specifically about the ranch down in Stockton, and the allegations were just beyond. There was allegations of kids being raped.
Just horrid.
It was just absolutely horrible, and I know that investigation, I guess, is still going on.
Okay. All right. Well, there's so much to talk about, and I know from time to time we will be checking in with you, Representative Rudy Veit, to get your take on how things are progressing in the coming legislative session.
One of the areas I want you to help me on is I want to be able to have the drones film our football games, because some of us don't get to all the games, and we like to have a good video of it.
Okay.
We'll just phone Iran?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We'll have to get those Iranian drones to give a better feed for you there.
Yeah.
Well,
get Blair Oaks to pay Hoboken, New Jersey, and we'll have it covered.
We'll call it the better technology for football-loving representatives there. We'll call that. Well, that'll be the bill. I'll try to get someone to introduce. Hey, thanks a lot, Rudy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, there he is, Rudy Veit. When we come back, what's up with Anna? Stay tuned.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
What I think about players taking a knee during the national anthem.
I didn't know. It says
It's a
7:25.
Christmas miracle.
What's up? What's hot with Hannah?
Well, I am not above admitting when I was wrong, even though I really don't like doing it. And I need to do that this morning. Randy, yesterday we were talking about the New York Times Time Person of the Year. And this is two different instances that I've spliced together, but here's some audio of good old Hannah, the producer, from yesterday. No, I mean, looking at the list of contenders, I think a lot of them make sense. Considering the New York Times being the New York Times, I would be stunned if Donald Trump won Time Person of the Year. Donald Trump was the 2016 Person of the Year.
Okay, he needs.
So that's another reason they probably wouldn't give it to him again. Yeah. As Stephanie told me this morning, that didn't age well. Because, of course, this morning and honestly last night, we started seeing headlines of, other news outlets starting to say that Trump is reportedly going to be the Time Person of the Year. I never believe it until I hear it from the big news outlets, right? But the Associated Press this morning is saying that Donald J. Trump officially is the 2024 Time Person of the Year. And Randy, get that smug grin off your face because I was wrong and you were right.
Well, usually that's a rare event. So when it happens, I have to get a little smug grin about it.
And Randy says, told you so.
Well, it's the fact that I was so confident. And John, I think you and I
Yeah,
yesterday,
I was kind of right there. I was like, probably Kamala.
Yeah. Well, and, Barack Obama was named Person of the Year in the 2 years that he won the presidency. But I really figured, Trump being the convicted felon and the bad guy, I really didn't think he would get it again after getting it in 2016. So
they've got a track record, though, of giving presidents Time Man of the Year more than once. Heck, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, even got Time Man of the Year twice.
Oh.
You got to tell us your name. One texter is saying you guys are totally throwing off my morning. Hannah is always 3 to 4 minutes late. So if you think you're...
Wait. Hannah is not the one that is 3 to 4 minutes late, okay?
Come on,
He's
Hannah.
like, am I late for work? We're already doing what's
come
up
on,
with Hannah.
Hannah.
You're not late for work. We're just early today.
Hannah finally getting her act together here and on time. It's good to hear, for a change.
Listen, if I really wanted to, I could boot us out of the previous segment.
Know.
I just didn't want to ruin, our interview with Rudy Veit.
We always get this great conversation going at the top of the hour, and and then I forget to look at the clock, and someone asks a question, and by the time the guest gets the question answered, we're
now
it's
we're
22
blaming
after.
the guest.
No, it's my fault because I get engrossed in it, and I forget to look at the clock. That's why very often you'll hear me get cut off as we go into a hard break. Because I'm into it, I'm grooving, I'm focused, I'm intense. I lose it.
Yeah, I mean, Rudy Veit did an excellent job. The person who is really guilty and who I have no problems blaming is Scott Fahn.
No, we chat with Scott Fahn, at 7:10 every Monday morning.
Yes.
And I just typically know that What's Hot with Hannah is going to be about 30 seconds on Mondays. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Well,
it's fine.
Specifically, we don't book Rudy immediately after Scott Fahn on the air because that, even for Coach LePage, that's too much talking about the Blair Oaks Falcons in one segment.
Yeah. So, we thank you for that wonderful bit of humility there. That's one thing we can say about Hannah. If and when she's rarely wrong, she owns it, and that's a refreshing thing these days.
This is also why I don't give hard opinions on things very often, because then I have to come and do this.
Sounds like a Hauswirth line.
I have to give you a big warning, ladies and gentlemen.
What was that?
Big. That's a warning announcement. We got a big announcement coming up on Monday in this time slot, so you'll want to take a listen. in controversy around various sects of secretaries of education, because there seems to be a double standard when it's a Republican nominee versus a Democrat, and she's written something in The Hill about that. The whole education story, the central influence on it, Trump talking about eliminating the Department of Education because of their untoward emphasis, as does the Department of Defense, on woke issues rather than reading, writing, arithmetic. I think all of us experience that with our children being distracted with all kind of stuff that, yeah, that's fine if you want to talk about it at home, or if they want to have an extracurricular CRT, DEI curriculum, that's fine. But our performance keeps going down while, well, not in CPS. We had a little uptick this year. But if you look just nationally and even in the state statistics, we're not really keeping up with the rest of the world. And anyway, we'll talk with Neerja then. And Scott Steele will join us from Steele Custom Meats about a great broadcast coming up on 104.5 News Radio 950 KWOS on Saturday.
Beautifully done.
That'll be at 8:35. It'll be really fun. A huge broadcast. Huge broadcast. So, okay, there's this story out of Boston. I saw this right after I had looked at the story out of Kansas City, and I thought, isn't it interesting? So the United States Supreme Court has refused to hear the Boston Parent Coalition for Academic Excellence versus the School Committee for Boston. And unfortunately, I'm afraid this is one where DEI and reverse discrimination is still thriving. The Boston Parent Coalition sued the city of Boston in 2021 for changes to the admissions process for Boston. Apparently, there's what are called exam schools, which are sort of prestigious and allegedly meritocracy-based schools for admission. The exam school admissions criteria working groups chart, which shows, why kids are admitted, or the various racial identities of kids, and then therefore the overall racial construct of the admitting class. What the chart said with the exam school admissions working group, so this is the school group saying, basically the new system would allow our exam schools to more closely reflect the racial and economic basis of Boston kids. Well, what happened was, Alito, as he said, the school committee was mocking Asian names during public comments over Zoom. The vice chair was texting fellow committee members that she hates what are called West Roxbury residents. Those are apparently predominantly white and affluent neighborhoods. So there was evidence of racial animus against the white kids, and the bottom line was they were trying to just create quotas. But the Supreme Court's not going to hear it.
They're not, and it's kind of a classic case of where you would expect the Supreme Court to step in. There was a circuit split between the First and the Fourth Circuit and the Second Circuit, and there were two issues on which the circuit split, not only on what constitutes these comparison groups, how do we determine those groups, and then also to determine disparate impact, but also as far as the impact, does it need to be suffered in the aggregate or only by the individual? And a lot of folks were hoping that they would take this case up and kind of resolve some of these ongoing questions, but they have so far declined.
Because let's go through that again for those who, maybe have a difficult time figuring it out. Sometimes I do too, but I think I've got it now. You've said more than once that if the Supreme Court's going to take a case, very often it has to do with disagreement among the appellate courts, right?
That's one way for a case to get to the Supreme Court.
Not that they will always do that, but that tends to give some momentum to a case getting to the court.
Correct.
And they don't have to, and obviously in this case they didn't. I don't know. Was this one of those, once in a while I get all worked up, I think so do most non-lawyers. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why won't they look at this? This is an important issue. And you say, well, it's really not about the merits of the issue. It's about process and technicalities,
Sometimes it can be about process and technicalities, but I think here it was going to be a case on the merits. And so, I haven't, I don't exactly know why the Supreme Court declined, but the bottom line is, a very, very, very few cases get up to the Supreme Court. And I think, but when there is a circuit split, that's oftentimes where they weigh in. And so I think a lot of folks were hopeful. I know our friends at Reason were hopeful that they would resolve this. They say it's a missed opportunity. They really wanted the Supreme Court to weigh in and side with the Second Circuit. They thought that would help better protect individuals from discrimination, and the Supreme Court declined. That doesn't mean, and oftentimes you kind of see like groups of cases bubble up in sort of areas. We had like one term where we did a lot of gun cases, and so it's not that perhaps that this issue won't bubble up here quickly in another case. And I don't know what kind of is behind this case that could, present this issue again. But in this instance, they decided to decline.
Well, we saw that where the Asian students at Harvard had an issue, about because they were clearly in terms of their, admittance exam performance and everything, they were being rejected in favor of less qualified. If you just look at raw test scores and so forth. And I think I think they pretty much dismantled a lot of that across universities, Okay, so there is good news, though, over in Kansas City, at least for a retired battalion chief. He'll be getting $850,000 settlement for dropping a lawsuit in which he claimed that he was denied a promotion due to his race and gender. His name's Daniel McGrath. He is white, retired in January, and the former fire chief, Donna Lake, gave the deputy chief's job that he was seeking, this McGrath, in 2022 to a black fire captain who McGrath alleges was less qualified. Now, this is a settlement. This was not a judgment. Lawsuit claimed that Lake signaled her intentions to pass over McGrath and others for promotion when she allegedly told a top subordinate that, quote, the days of the fire department being ran by older white men are over.
Wow. She didn't check with her lawyer before she said that out loud.
Now, this Donna Lake, who is white, was the department's first and so far only woman fire chief. During her tenure, the Kansas City Star said that had a series of articles documenting how women and black firefighters had for decades been victims of discrimination within the fire department. So she was going to get her comeuppance, right? And I guess that's, if you're going to do that, you don't tell someone about it. just promote who you want to do, and then let the chips fall where they may. Well, at any rate, I think this guy's going to end up getting maybe more than he would have had he been promoted to the deputy fire chief, right?
Well, it sounds like there are other issues. Kansas City paid $800,000 last year over an assistant division chief that was alleged to have been subject to ongoing harassment. So not a good look, especially as these conversations bubble up. John, in the State House about, we've had Kansas City police budget issues. We have issues. I know one issue is, should St. Louis control local control of the police? But you see, this in the public sector, or I guess, this isn't police technically, but I think you see these kinds of things and you wonder, should these locals have all of the control over their own budget and their own situation if we are having situations like this?
Well, this is interesting. Yeah. Two other firefighters were given $350,000 each, I guess, last year because of the same type of a hiring dispute. And the Law Department and Risk Management Committee recommended approval. So interesting.
And so you have to wonder, it's not just about, getting the payout. It's how do we go forward and fix these problems that appear to be, a pattern and systemic within the organization itself? Do you just switch out the leadership? Do they need additional training? How do you prevent this going forward?
Yeah. Well, I have my feelings about it, but what do you think, John? How do we prevent this going forward? Can't litigate this kind of stuff. These are in people's hearts, isn't it? Isn't this a cultural problem?
Yeah, you would think. Like Steph said, some of the things that show up even at the State House that are like, is this best decided by people making more laws about it, or in the public sector?
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't either. I
was listening to a podcast this morning, very early this morning.
The Wake Up Mid-Missouri podcast?
Of course.
No, I have to span the world of podcasts, all for your betterment.
You probably listened to the Wake Up Mid-Missouri podcast last night, right?
Absolutely.
You were already caught up. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. It's in one ear while the other podcasts are in the other ear, and I'm prepping.
Yeah, right.
So I heard a guy named Dr. Sachs, S-A-X, who's written a book on parenting, and he was talking with Megyn Kelly about his thesis with validated evidence-based research that would suggest that, for instance, we've talked about TikTok and its influence on teenagers. No. He says TikTok, they do not see the levels of depression and anxiety with the same tip-top kind of I can make a better reel than you can make, and it's really not about connecting with your friends. It's about showmanship and all this. In Russia and in Greece. And he maintains that in America, and there's some generational education on narcissism throughout the society. And basically it's like, and you've said it, and I know you don't mean it in this sense always, but gotta win. Rather than, so if someone sees in those countries, if they see someone performing extravagantly, doing the pole vault and going 20 feet when no one else is, in Christian cultures, people celebrate that. And they go, wow, look at my friend, she did that. In our post-Christian culture, Dr. Sachs, who's written books on parenting and who maintains you should not have social media exposure for your kids before age 16 or 18, that in a post-Christian society where it's all about me, it's not about humility, it's not about servanthood, this is why social media is so corrupting to our kids. And I just thought it was a fascinating discussion because you wonder if this whole business we have with woke ideology and everything couldn't be corrected with just people treating one another like children of God.
Yeah, but that same motivation that makes us want to win and be a little bit narcissistic is healthy for capitalism. I mean, what we know about European countries is we are so much more productive than them, and I think that's what keeps us number one in the world. I mean, that innate Americanism, and I think it's just part of our culture and part of capitalism, and I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. And sure, it comes out in different ways, perhaps on social media, perhaps in other ways, perhaps in a productive society. And I look at their culture, and surely maybe in some ways they're happier, but they're lazier too. I mean, it's not a lifestyle that I would want to choose, and so I don't think I would say that it's a bad thing.
Well, but let me share with you what medical students have told me in 1990 versus 2012. What do you want to do when you grow up? And I got to figure out how to pay off these bills, and I got to make a lot of money because I got 4 kids and I bought 40 acres and we have a Suburban. Oh, you're a medical student? So they tailor many incoming medical students they tailor their career choice based on their income. I've always reminded them, I was trained in an era where it's like, if you are a good doctor and you treat your patients well, the money will follow. And I think from a capitalistic standpoint, the American ethic has always been, build a better mousetrap, don't worry, the money will happen. I'm not sure that we do that anymore. I think it's a short-term view. It's like, what do I have to do to make a lot of money? That's a different construct.
I guess
different construct.
Again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think I think if you're not getting out of school and your first focus is, Hannah, how do I pay off my student loans? If your focus is anywhere else,
my focus was on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Thank you.
Okay. But I think that's a good focus to have. Your number one priority is to pay the things that you said you were going to pay. And if you have to do something that maybe when you wake up in the morning you don't like, or requires you to wake up early or work with your hands or have a dirty job, then too freaking bad. Show up and pay your bills.
But you can have both. You can find a job that requires hard work.
But telling kids that they can be an artist or an underwater basket weaver and follow your heart is a bunch of baloney.
I would agree with you, but I think that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that people should seek service and productivity first, and the money will follow. If your mindset is do the right thing, be fulfilled by making a difference in this world, the money will follow. Basket weavers don't make a difference in this big, bright world.
And you're good at it, but there are plenty of people out there in the nonprofit space and doing other things that are doing the Lord's work and are doing wonderful
Spanish words, despite not being able to speak one word of Spanish. Nigel Edwards holds 5 titles in the English language version, plus 2 for winning in French, and became bored just dominating those versions. So, although he couldn't converse with the opponents at the Spanish Championship in Granada, Spain, he won 23 out of 24 games. A friend says he can't understand why other people can't just do the same thing. He can look at a block of words together, and once they go into his brain as a picture, he can just recall that very easily. Previously in 2008, he had to forget 40,000 British English words so he could win the U.S. version of the game because they didn't recognize those. His mom said her son was no English standout in school. He never went to college and says, I don't think he ever read a book apart from the dictionary. He says, I get lots of requests from journalists wanting to interview me and I'm not interested. He said, I do not understand what all the hoo-ha is about. Hoo-ha. Hoo-ha. 15 points on Scrabble. Now you know the rest of that multilingual story.
Have you ever
I don't think of the same hoo-ha meaning as what you gentlemen just meant.
Well, that's what he said. And he's fluent in multi-language.
Stephanie and I just made eye contact.
What is a hoo-ha?
The things you spent your life looking all day at.
That's right.
Oh, my. Well, let's switch this around.
Are you serious right now? You've never heard that one?
I thought hoo-ha is where you go and they put take a bowl of bean sprouts. Don't you take a bowl of bean sprouts and they put it out on the thing and they grill it up for you? Isn't that what it's called? The Siberian grill?
I think that's hoo-hot, but you're close.
I don't know. I don't know these urban slang things, guys. My mind is pure and clean. Now, have you ever played the game? You probably haven't, Hannah. Have you ever played the game where you open up your dictionary and you just start pointing at a word and just looking at random words in the dictionary?
No, because I'm not a nerd like you.
It's like
Stephanie.
opening. I love to do that. Or you open your Bible and just say, okay, show me a Bible verse of the day. About the inauguration. Okay. Well, since we're talking about inauguration and a new administration in town and controversy about one after the other cabinet nominee from Donald Trump, let's talk with Neerja Deshpande. She's the policy analyst and engagement coordinator at Independent Women's Forum, one of my favorite think tanks up in D.C. And she joins us now to talk about a piece that, Neerja, you wrote in The Hill, which I think is fascinating, but again, not surprising, about a little double standards when it comes to these matters, right? Tell us about it.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me on. I work on education policy at Independent Women's Forum, and I recently wrote a piece called "The Fight Against Linda McMahon is Nothing New. We've seen the show before," and it's just about how many double standards there are, as you said, for conservative nominees. In this case, in the education realm. So you look at the sort of scrutiny that Linda McMahon is getting, and you look at the scrutiny that Betsy DeVos got in the first Trump administration. But then you compare that to the lack of scrutiny that both, the secretaries of education under Obama and under Biden got, and it's just a stunning difference.
Well, what do we know? Let's try to be. We always try to figure out being truth tellers here on the program. Let's look at their just raw alleged qualifications or not. Okay, so Cardona versus Linda McMahon in the realm of education. What is their experience? What do we know about either at front lines or at administratively or in research or academia? Let's compare the two. Cardona versus McMahon.
Yeah, so the thing about Miguel Cardona is that, he's been Secretary of Education for 4 years, and in that amount of time, right, he's been approved by the teachers unions and by the mainstream media. He's gone by with very, very little scrutiny, to the point where Politico actually wrote an article about halfway through the Biden administration called "If You Can't Name Biden's Education Secretary, You Probably Aren't Alone," which I thought was quite funny, but also very telling, right? But you look at Cardona's record, and what you see is, two sort of major things I would point out. So one is this FAFSA rollout, right? This terrible federal financial aid application, supposed reform that wound up actually curtailing the college plans of kids who needed financial aid to go to college. Because what wound up happening was that in the name of reforming federal financial aid, the Department of Education just completely messed up the website. It was completely glitching. The form didn't make sense. It was overestimating need, underestimating need rather, and overestimating how much students could pay. All sorts of absurd problems just wound up affecting the kids that they were supposedly helping. So that's one really, really big story. And another big story out of the Education Department, I guess, is just the glaring failure of school closures, right? Of all this federal emergency educational funding that has just this year expired. But for years, there was all this money going to these schools with zero accountability, basically. And unfortunately, schools are failing to retain teachers. Right, schools are seeing declining behavior and also declining test scores in the wake of school closures. So that's one other big thing. And a third big thing, actually, I said there's two things. I would say there's three overarching problems. The third one that you see under Miguel Cardona is just the Title IX rollout, right? So basically, they've taken on the Biden administration and then obviously the Department of Education within the Biden administration. What they've done is they've redefined Title IX was always supposed to protect against sex discrimination, right? So if you're, a woman and you're not getting adequate resources, then that's a sex discrimination lawsuit. The Biden admin overstepped this and said, okay, actually we're counting gender identity as part of what Title IX protects. So once you sort of move away from sex and you go toward gender identity, that just completely changes the entire meaning of Title IX, which is why it's, being held up in all sorts of injunctions, the Biden rewrite. So you sort of see these big three educational failures, right? And you wonder, okay, this is quite bad, and this is by someone who's pretty entrenched in the system. So what's better? And you look at somebody like Linda McMahon, who's a successful business executive, right? She has been the administrator of the Small Business Administration in the past. She's on the transition team. She's really done a lot of things that point to success, right? That point to administrative success. To call her unqualified, as unions are doing, as a lot of the mainstream media are doing, is, I think not fair, right? Because she successfully managed things.
And talk to us a little bit in your piece details some of the history here. It's not the first time that the Liberals have been triggered by an education pick. Several years ago, we hosted Betsy DeVos at the state capitol in Jefferson City for our annual FedSoc meeting. And I remember there being a lot of controversy even after she was picked and after she had some significant progress there. Bringing her here, I remember there was a lot of conversations about, she was kind of a lightning rod at the time.
Yeah, it's crazy how just completely maligned Betsy DeVos was during, the first Trump term. I mean, that woman, she dealt with so much. And she actually, you look at her record, it's a pretty incredible record. She did a lot in that admin. So some of the most important things she did was actually correcting Obama era failures. Again, Obama era failures that were just sort of papered over, glossed over, not really counted as failures, I think, in the mainstream media, while Betsy DeVos's every move was sort of calculated. And she was, again, really, really unfairly maligned. So in the Obama admin, right, one really bad thing the Obama admin did in 2011 was the Department of Education sent out this Dear Colleague letter. And essentially, that was another Title IX thing, right? Essentially, they said, they tasked colleges with basically creating on-campus courts to adjudicate sexual harassment cases. And, in these courts, they basically denied the accused any rights. So what you saw over, the 9 years between that Dear Colleague letter and Betsy DeVos changing the rule was a lot of men who were falsely accused of sexual assault, right? You saw, anybody who was accused of sexual assault denied their due process rights. You saw things like, all these sorts of just kangaroo courts basically on campus that I think led to the undermining of the presumption of innocence in our justice system. And even if that's not technically our justice system, right, it's still a part of it. I mean, I think within the mainstream conscience, it was, that presumption of innocence really, really died. And so Betsy DeVos fixes this. She doesn't say, sexual assault cases shouldn't be dealt with by colleges. Of course, she's not saying that. What she said was anybody who's accused of sexual assault should have the right to cross-examine the person accusing them, and they should have the right to due process, right? And she went through the entire rulemaking process to do this. She didn't just give out a Dear Colleague letter. She really, did everything she possibly could, and she was called a rape apologist for that, to say that due process is somehow, apologetics for rape is an absurdity. So that's one thing that Betsy DeVos did that was actually restoring faith in the justice system, restoring faith in these sorts of proceedings. But she was called the opposite. She was accused of doing the opposite of that. And then another thing that she did was really reform student behavior, right? So one problem was in the Obama admin, they basically started penalizing schools. They said, okay, if 2 Black students are suspended and 1 white student is suspended, right, then that's racism because more Black students were suspended than white students, even if all the students had, committed the same offense. So that was like a change from previous policy. So they would not previously, it was not assumed to be a civil rights offense, right? If that behavioral, if there were some disparities, right, as long as there wasn't unequal treatment. And then the Obama admin said, actually, any disparity is evidence of unfair treatment.
Sure.
And so Betsy DeVos went back on that. And then she was called a racist for that. And that's ridiculous, right? Because, again, she's restoring credibility to the system. And she's just being called a racist for implementing policies that schools actually wanted because they don't want the federal government breathing down their neck every time they have to make a disciplinary decision, right?
Right.
When you see that and comparing that to McMahon, it's like, okay, McMahon's going to get slandered too. And, something we have to know going into this.
We're talking with Neerja Deshpande. She's a policy analyst on education matters at Independent Women's Forum on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Well, we've heard Cardona speak on Capitol Hill. He's quick to point out, wow, we're one of the smallest agencies of the federal government with only, 4,000 and some employees. With a $68 billion budget, I guess the question to you is, if the Trump folks in Congress are successful in getting rid of the Department of Education, how do those monies, those education dollars, get back to the states?
Yeah, I think the main thing is, when there's all this talk about getting rid of the Department of Education, a lot of it is, people, again, there's this idea, this is you hating education. Actually, it's wanting to save it. It's wanting to bring those matters of oversight, of control back to the states, right? Back to local governments and districts. Because when states and local governments don't have those rights, what you end up with is just this big federal bureaucracy that's laden with red tape. And that's not really helping anybody. And we haven't seen any meaningful improvements to education. We've actually seen the exact opposite, right, over the course of the sort of history of the Department of Education.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it. There's a double standard. And, of course, your piece in The Hill, I recommend that to everyone because it really points out the hypocrisy of the left. This guy, Cardona, who is such an educational pedigree, has been a disaster for our children's advancement scholastically. And Linda McMahon, on the other hand, it should be said, sat on a college board of trustees for 15 years. Yeah, she had
Sacred Heart in Connecticut.
Right, and she at Sacred Heart, and through the WWE, they had a Get Real campaign promoting literacy, so she's got some cred herself. Neerja, we're out of time. We thank you for all the work you're doing to bring, again, showing the light on the corruption and the really the miscommunication on the left concerning these matters. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for having me.
All righty. There she is, Neerja Deshpande. When we come back, it's time for the market report. Stay tuned.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
There are crazy positions on the far left and crazy positions on the far right. On the left, there are people who believe a man can get pregnant
Even local folks. All right. So
Did
the
you turn it off and turn it back on?
I can't do that right now. I don't
totally
have any
can.
time. The futures are in the red this morning. Also, I think, we've been talking a lot, Randy, about the implications of the new Trump administration and how quickly, perhaps, he can turn things around. And I have, a lot of folks say on day one, a lot of this stuff can be undone. But some of this stuff, I think, Randy shakes his head. And I'm kind of with you.
You're right. I agree with you.
I'm with you. There are some things that I think are going to take a massive shift to get back to where we used to be. And one in particular, I think, is the FTC. Of course, it's been led by Lena Khan. She has been very active at an agency that for a while was pretty benign. And most recently here, as we are just less than 40 days away from Trump's inauguration, she has officially blocked the Albertsons merger, Albertsons-Kroger merger. That merger was up in court in two different states. There was a case in Oregon and a case in Washington. In both cases, the courts sided with the FTC, saying that the merger would reduce competition for shoppers and increase prices for consumers. Are we really worried about mergers amongst grocery stores?
I'm worried about concentration of power at a certain level.
It's a tough issue for me because I think ultimately I just feel like the market will solve it and that businesses should be able to do what we want. But the question, I think a lot of folks do have a question about with Trump's new pick, who he has named Andrew Ferguson as the next FTC pick. We know Ferguson does have concerns about big tech and kind of monopoly powers there. But he is on some of these other mergers. There's been a lot of mergers like with respect to airlines and other things. I think he will be more open-minded and particularly, but this deal's already dead. And now I guess, once your deal dies, what happens next? They start fighting with one another. And so right now that's what we're seeing as a result of this merger. Albertsons has apparently already sued Kroger for refusing to cooperate in the last 2 years, trying to win this battle against the FTC. But I think Lena Khan, this whole shift in the FTC, it's not going to be a day one thing that you're going to be able to just change. And these deals, the due diligence, this court case has been going on for 2 years. She killed other deals that were, 3 years in the making. It's not like you can just revive those back. And I think if you're a company looking at in a big space and you're looking at entering into mergers and acquisitions, it's going to take a while for companies to feel comfortable that I'm going to invest all of this time and all this money in trying to do this deal, and then at the very last minute get it undone by the courts or by the federal government.
Yeah,
I think that's tough.
I think I'm all for monopolies in a largely unregulated society, but when you in such a highly both federally and state regulated society, only big companies can comply with those. They only have that muscle and that ability to spend that much overhead on that. And so that's why I think we have antitrust laws. If the government stayed the heck out of everything except the 18 enumerated powers, I wouldn't have a problem with monopolies. We wouldn't need antitrust.
But I think Albertson and Kroger, one of their arguments was, hey, we are smaller than some of these other guys, and letting us merge together would allow us to compete with the big guys like Walmart. And so, I think there are arguments on both sides. And
I agree.
I think having the government step in and saying, you guys as business people have decided this is best, it will increase competition with other big players in the space, and having the federal government say, actually, no, we know better than you.
Has allowing the government to get involved in healthcare helped us with consolidation in that space? No.
It hasn't, but here the government is getting involved in blocking something that the businesses want to do.
I don't know. These are really philosophical, ideological questions. Our friends at Reason would say the government has no place in that, right?
We should report that the NASDAQ hit 20,000 for the first time yesterday, so it has been, the markets continue to roar, although, again, the futures are in the red this morning.
And we should be talking about, too, that just rolling in, we'll unpack that, maybe talk about it a little bit later if we have time, but the wholesale price index rose more than expected. Maybe at 850 we can talk about that. Scott Steele coming up next on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
I think just local news is the most important stuff to me, even though it's kind of bad stuff going on around me, but it's the most relevant.
special holiday things happen in and around Jefferson City, Columbia, mid-Missouri, and so anywhere in mid-Missouri, you're going to want to listen in to something coming up very special. And,
I'm real excited for this.
I really am too. Scott Steele from Steele's Custom Meats joins us in studio on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Yep, Scott's here from, like the man said, from Steele's Fine Custom Meats, and year 2 of our patented Christmas show coming up Saturday morning on KWS. Scott, from your place. What's the plan?
Yeah. Thanks for having us on. Like you said, Christmas show. Mike Michelson on the keyboard, playing Christmas tunes for us all. And
tinkling on the keyboards. Is that what that's called?
Yeah, I guess so. I've never played a keyboard, so
tinkling is a weird choice of words.
No, that's one old-fashioned term. He's tinkling on the keyboards.
Tinkling the ivory.
Oh no, it's tickling. That's right. Oh, I got that wrong.
I was like, that doesn't sound right.
You're like a musician too, Randy. Yikes.
I don't know.
Hopefully, there's no tinkling happening during the show Saturday.
If Randy shows up with his trombone, watch out.
If the governor-elect hears this commentary this morning, he might be a no-show, but that is the plan as far as we know, right?
Yeah, that's right. He's supposed to be there. So.
Sorry, Scott. That was bad.
That's all right. I'm going to get my mop bucket ready when I get back.
I'm joking. We know that. Go ahead.
So tell us what the plan is. I mean, for a few folks out there who don't know, Scott's father-in-law is governor-elect Mike Keogh, and boy, for years and years, he did the patented Christmas show with everybody down at the dealership, but moved to your place last year.
Yeah. We last year I guess would have been probably our second Christmas season in business. So he moved it up there last year, and it was good turnout. So we're going to do it again. We'll be cooking up some maple breakfast sausage and our house-made bacon for people that are hanging out. We'll have some coffee and things like that. So. Be a good time.
I gotta know, Scott, will there be any spicy dill pickle meat sticks in the cooler on Saturday?
No spicy dill pickle, but I've replaced those with something better.
I'm listening.
Ultimate cheeseburger snack stick.
Yep. That'll do it.
Yes.
Those will fit in a stocking, right? No, I think we've got. I just think it's a good reminder for folks, because I always struggle with parents who have one of everything already. That my Christmas list has really shifted to consumables. I think everyone can enjoy something, and when it's not something that's just going to sit around your house as another item of things. As someone who hates clutter, I love this as a Christmas idea. So if anyone who I'm on your list is listening, you can add food products to my list.
Scott? Well, I've been telling my family, they always are looking for ideas for Christmas for my husband, who is notoriously hard to shop for. And I've been telling them to go check out Steele's Fine Custom Meats, because most of the stuff there we can stick in the freezer and we can pretty much enjoy it all year round.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't want to get any meat for them while they're there, we sell gift cards. So
there you go.
That's always a good choice.
Let's ask about some practical planning, because often, all of a sudden the big day is there and you forget to plan, but you had a thought in your mind, and then, you may need to order something on a custom basis. And I would think at Steele's Fine Custom Meats, there may be some suggestions for people to think about pre-ordering certain cuts or certain roasts or certain something now and then. Do you get people calling at the last minute? It's the night before Christmas Eve, right? 23rd, 24th. Can I have this special cut with this and that? So let's talk about some of those things that people need to be thinking about now rather than regretting it later.
Yeah. We start taking pre-orders right after Thanksgiving for Christmas. And we recommend everybody pre-order if they know they want something. It doesn't even have to be a special item, just a simple prime rib or a tenderloin roast, because we age all of our meat, and that's a process of about 40 to 50 days. So if you call the day before, obviously it's too late at that point to age
so it
the
takes
meat.
some planning on your part to have enough inventory of the great aged meats. Let me ask you a technical question, and you can be honest with me here. I've become a fan for health reasons of grass-finished beef that really
not
never
this
ever.
Again.
No. No, but is it true or not and you may or may not ever deal in this kind of thing, but is it true that if you're going to try to do that beef, that you have to? I've heard about something called wet aging. Can you will you custom wet age if someone wants to do that on their farm, or buy some from a farmer that does that and then bring it to you for processing?
Not necessarily in that exact way, because we don't have a true harvest facility, so I can't butcher live animals. But in regards to wet aging, we do wet age all of our meat. That's how we age. We don't have a dry aging.
Oh, so explain what the difference is.
So dry aging would be you take the meat, just bare meat, and you put it in a dry aging cabinet or a refrigerator if you wanted, anything that's refrigerated, basically.
Okay.
You take the piece of meat, you put it in there on a rack of some type that can kind of get airflow. You don't want it to be like, say, on a solid metal shelf where the bottom would not be exposed to air.
Yeah,
so
get bed sores then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So, and you put it in there. You control the humidity. You control the temperature, depending on what flavor profile, what everything that you're looking for in your taste. In the end, depends on what temperature, what humidity, and how long you leave it in there.
Yeah.
There's a science behind that.
Okay.
And then, so that's kind of dry aging 101. Usually, you do anywhere between 30 and say 60 days.
Okay.
If you wanted to go a long time on the dry aging process, you could probably go out to 100.
Wow.
So that's dry aging in a nutshell. Wet aging is the same kind of process as far as time goes, 30 to 60 days, except for you take the meat and it's in like a vacuum sealed package.
Yes.
And you leave it in that package, and you just leave it on the shelf. And the natural enzymes and bacteria in the meat, not bad bacteria, just bacteria and enzymes, they will break down the proteins and the fibers in the meat, and that will not only make it more tender, but it also change your flavor profile.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. So there is a difference, and see, this is what's really cool about talking to you, because it takes this kind of precise, trying to profile exactly what it is that the customer needs with science involved, and a little bit of art, I guess, too, right? A little bit of art
absolutely.
involved.
It's an art, and everyone's going to do it a little different and have a reason that they believe that it's a little different. And so, everywhere you go might have just a little different spin on it. So
now, whenever we're talking about food, you can always count on Hauswirth dropping in the studio.
Well,
Hauswirth just dropped in the studio.
Amen.
Yeah, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Randy, and great job this morning. I think for our listeners in Columbia especially, they may not know as much about Steele's. Obviously, people know it in Jefferson City and Wardsville and in areas around there. Tell us a little bit more about your company, and there's a remote for our listeners on KWS, I believe, coming up as well. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the remote's on Saturday morning, 8 to 10. We'll be serving up our maple sausage and breakfast maple sausage and bacon for breakfast that we make there at the store. We'll have Mike Michelson on the keyboard, and it'll be a good time. And as far as the business goes, we're a local butcher shop. We have a full-service deli for sandwiches and sliced lunch meat to take home. And then all of our meat that we get is sourced from in the state of Missouri. We go all over the state to source that meat on a weekly basis. We cut everything in-house. We make all of our sausage, brats, bacon, snack sticks, things like that. So
I am literally, my mouth is watering. I am not kidding you, because this morning.
Don't drool on the microphone.
Usually I have these little golden orbs of goodness, the little temple oranges, a couple of those, and some string cheese. I forgot everything this morning. Well, I had an accident with the thing I was going to bring. I'll have to tell you that. So I am literally, mouth is watering here. What time you guys open?
We'll be open at 10, but if you're hungry, I'll be there at 9:30.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, and a lot of folks might not know this, but they do daily lunch options.
Oh, really?
They have really good sandwich options that you can just step in or stop in and grab lunch while you're there. Maybe grab some other cuts of meat while you're there, but I do need to ask, Scott, I was a big fan of the pumpkin spice milk that you guys carry from Ozark Mountain Creamery. I'm sure you probably don't have any more pumpkin spice, but do you have any other seasonal flavors in the cooler I should be looking for?
I am out right now, but they have eggnog.
Ooh.
I have not tried it. I'll be honest, I'm not an eggnog person, but I've heard it's very good.
Well, Scott Steele, we thank you for being with us, and we look forward to the special broadcast again
with Mike Keogh.
And again, that will be when?
That'll be Saturday, this Saturday, the 14th, 8 to 10.
8 to 10 with Governor-elect Mike Kehoe. That'll be a lot of fun. And you're going to have someone
That's awesome.
tickling the ivories.
Yeah,
right?
not tinkling.
Yeah. Now, wait, okay, look, in case you want to know, in the UK, across the pond, the term is tinkle the ivories. Here in the States, it's tickle the ivories. This is a fact.
How
Thank
long
you very
did it
much.
take you to do that Google search
I knew
while we were
that.
talking to Scott?
I span the world
booking
of
for the
music.
multilingual
I'm an
Scrabble
internationally well-informed musicologist. Okay. All right. Thanks, Scott Steele. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks,
great.
guys.
That's great, and I encourage for especially our KWS listeners, but the Eagle listeners as well. And John does a great job profiling these businesses. What a job they do! I encourage people to go out to that remote, not just for the food and to see our staff at KWS, but Governor-elect Mike Keogh. It's not often. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not often a governor-elect over the years that I've seen come out to a radio remote.
No, that's
local.
cool.
That tells you his love for the radio station, but also for agriculture.
And he's just a normal guy.
He is.
And
Who
once
happens
again,
to
we're kind of a
accomplish
big
great things.
deal.
We try our best.
All righty. We'll be back and wrap it up with leftovers after this.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
I just wanted to thank you very much for being where you are for 3 hours of my day.
Don, what's on your leftover plate?
Well, we've heard from the fire investigators at the state fire marshal's office, and they now say they've wrapped up their investigation into that Jefferson City house explosion that happened a couple weekends ago. Now they're saying because of the damage, they'll be lucky to have a positive determination of the cause, but they did say they were told by one of the property owners that one of the two furnaces in the house, gas furnaces, was not working properly. So if we have much of anything more down the road about a more definitive cause, I'd be doubtful.
Yeah, okay.
But no one died, and people are recovering.
Weren't there 3 in the ICU critically injured, or they are getting better, though?
Yeah, I think the whole bunch of were 6 taken to MU Healthcare.
Stephanie.
Last session, we did spend quite a bit of time talking about this whistleblower lawsuit against House Speaker Dean Plocher, and that has been dismissed. We learned that yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Dismissed. Oh, and I have a poor Hannah thing. Poor Hannah. Federal Appeals Court upheld the rapidly approaching TikTok ban, Hannah. So it may be upon you. What are you going to do if TikTok goes south?
It's not going south.
The order from a 3-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals preserves the bipartisan law that Biden signed in April forcing ByteDance, that's the parent company of TikTok, to cease operations in the U.S. And they're trying to find buyers, I guess. I don't know, but
I think someone would be stupid not to buy it.
But are you going to get the intellectual property that defines TikTok? That's the question. Are you just buying the brand?
There's not a whole lot of intellectual things happening on TikTok.
What about that algorithm that feeds you the addictive reels that you scroll?
They're called TikToks.
Yeah, TikToks on TikTok, Reels on Facebook and Instagram.
Well, I meant reels generically, like Coca-Cola, even though it's a dark, cola soda.
There's a term for that.
What do you mean?
Like
soda?
when the brand becomes the product itself.
Yeah.
Like Kleenex.
Yeah.
There you go.
But there's an actual term for...
Or Band-Aids.
Yeah. I'm going to have to look it up. It's going to bother me. Oh, I do want to shout out our state employees who raised $767,000 in their annual charitable campaign.
Oh, nice.
More than $300,000 of that will go to charities in Central Missouri. So I think Department of Corrections had the highest participation rate, but the article also shouts out the Department of Agriculture. So it's nice to see our local state workers, who include a huge part of our workforce, giving back here locally. Congrats.
And a story that's a couple days old, but and there may be some newly appointed incoming agency heads, but Governor Kehoe had announced several really, I think, ongoing picks. Commissioner of Administration Ken Zellers, that's following through, right? That's ongoing. Dan Hogg, State Budget Director. Michelle Hadaway at Economic Development, that's a carry on. Chris Chin, we talked with her now and then about ag issues. Department of Corrections, Trevor Foley. Anna, is it Hui on the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, and Department of Public Safety, Mark James. Are those all carry-throughs?
Mark James has come back from the Matt Blunt era.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
When he was DPS director. He's a former trooper and an ATF agent.
And again, Governor-elect Kehoe will be inaugurated on Monday, January 13th at the Capitol.
All right.
Come on by Steele's Fine Custom Meats Saturday morning at 8 and hang out with the governor-elect.
Yeah.
The official name apparently is genericization, or some people call it genericide, when like Kleenex becomes the name for
So we're not to the point where I can call anything that's an addictive, meaningless in your life video that lasts 20 seconds a reel?
No.
Unless it's about Coke.
Yeah.
A generic Coke.
Something else that we have coming up on Wednesday is our annual 1-for-1 holiday food drive with Commerce Bank.
Mm-hmm.
Both KWOS and 93.9 The Eagle. There's information posted on the station websites. Okay. We're going to be hanging out at Columbia Mall and at Buckeye in Jefferson City on Wednesday, collecting food and monetary donations. So looking forward to that, and great. Looking forward to the Wake Up fam turning out for the food bank.
Giving is always better than receiving. Dr.